Okay, let's go ahead and get started there, everybody. Welcome back to another Terraria modding coding session. I'm your host, Strange Bro Jim, and today we're going to continue our learning of how to build some, try to continue learning how to build a Terraria mod because I had an idea. I had plenty of time on my hands, being unemployed, and figured, let's work on something that, I had an idea for, the modding can be fairly easy to do, so let's try to tackle it. So, um, so we're going through a lot of the concepts and stuff like that to learn as much as we can, tackle, what we can, so that we can, um, you know, uh, fulfill the mod that we're kind of looking for, right? So, um, so last time we saw the minion, and we were like, oh, nope, don't need that. I think, did we? Yeah, we went through the mod config and the JSON, so we already took care of that one. Um, the mod dust really doesn't apply to the mod that I kind of want to make, being the fact that, I just want to make a mod that is just UI based, and that's it. Um, so there really is no need for dust particles or, tiny particles for me to add as a visual element to this. It would just kind of distract from the overall experience of what I would need to add anyway. So yeah, this really isn't something that I'm really completely interested in. So um so yeah, I'm probably gonna just say we're gonna go ahead and skip that, and and move on to um, another topic altogether because um, this really isn't something that um, I need to know about, you know. So, um, I mean, probably very useful if you're wanting to do anything, like magical based or something like that. Might be really helpful for along those lines, but I mean, my main plan is to just kind of build a user interface, so don't really need to worry about this. So we're just going to head on back here, and we're going to go to the mod item description here. So, um, all right. So, um, so for the basic item, this guide has been updated to 1.4.4. Great. I mean, it's pretty much the same as, you know, I mean, main Terraria is version 1.4.4, so, um, it's just the tModLoader is actually version 2024.6.3.0, according to what I have right now. So, one would figure that they would have this guide, you know, aligned with the tModLoader itself, but whatever. Doesn't really matter all that much, I guess. I mean, aligning with the Terraria mod or Terraria game itself is good. So, yeah. Okay, so this guide serves to explain common things shared among all items. So, what is an item? It is important to be aware of the distinction between items, projectiles, and tiles. Starting out, you may inadvertently confuse concepts if you aren't clear how they are different. For example, some people might get confused and try to add a workbench item to a recipe when really they wanted to add the workbench tile. It is also important to realize that many something like a boomerang weapon consists of both the item and the projectile. While a simple concept, try to remember. Okay. This paragraph is a little confusing, or has um, the the wording isn't necessarily completely crisp, as though they didn't read through their paragraph well enough in English, or maybe English isn't exactly their first language. I don't know. Who knows? Just not sure, but um, um, it's just this right here. Is the main sentence. It is also important to realize that many something. What do you mean? Many something. This is the problem right there in this particular sentence. That's all. So, making an item. To add an item to Terraria, we must first create a class that inherits from mod item. To do so, make a CS file in your mod's source directory, and then open the file in your text editor. Paste the following into that file, replacing name here with the internal name of your item and the mod space name here with your mod's folder name slash namespace. A common mistake is to use apostrophes or spaces in internal names. Don't do this, the computer won't understand. So, um, so yeah, they're basically saying, here's basically a good template for you to use to add in your item. Perfectly fine. Perfectly reasonable along those lines. Um, Now that you have a CS file, bring your texture file, a PNG file, and an image file that you've made, and put it in the folder with this CS file. Make sure read auto load so you know how to satisfy what the computer expects for its file name and folder structure. Set defaults is the most important part of an item is the set defaults. Set defaults is where you set values for the item, things like what ammo does the item use, what ammo does the item use, how big is the item, and which tile the item places. See item class documentation to see what values commonly set and set defaults mean. Okay, that might be kind of useful to know to understand. So I'll open that one up. You can also view vanilla item values by visiting vanilla item field values. Many examples of different items can be found in example mod content.items. Kind of curious about those, so let's go ahead and open those up. Localization. After you build your mod, the localization file, typically found in my blah 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 blah, will be populated with entities in the newly added items. For items, you'll see entities for the display name and the tooltip. The display name will default to the class name with capital letters separating the words. The tooltip will default to nothing. You can edit this file to customize these localizations. Um, If you want a tooltip with multiple lines, please read the multi-line section in the localization wiki page to learn the correct syntax. Um, hmm. I don't know if this is correct or not because you have like different file names, you know, with the JSON file, for the localization, right? So if you want to have different localizations, you would have different file names associated with the different languages that you're, setting up the localizations for. So you wouldn't necessarily edit this file to customize the localizations. You would be kind of creating your own new file, would you not? I mean, that should be the case if I've, reading it correctly, or if I'm understanding it correctly. Hmm. I guess I'll have to maybe look back at the localization again later. I mean, I was kind of already talking about how I was going to need to um, pause my studying of the localization anyway because um, there were, um, I wasn't ready to go over all the nuanced details of it early and, potentially forget about them after I've kind of already worked on the mod. I'm pretty sure that I'd probably have to like go back to that the localization page anyway to restudy everything that I had already kind of looked at, just so that I can build the localization correctly. So, okay. So that is it for the um, mod item. So let's look at these other pages that we opened up here. This one is a really lengthy document. Okay, good to know. But a lot of it is just kind of describing a lot of this. But I mean, that could still be kind of useful for me because um, like I might want to check to see whether or not if there's a particular um, field that's used, to see whether or not if it's a material or not. Um, yeah, material bool. So, um, so yeah, it's typically automatically assigned to be to be false, meaning that it is, if you basically create a brand new material, it will automatically be set to, you know, it's false, it's not a material, you can't use it as in, um, you know, um, it's not used in another recipe, you know. You can't use it to create something else. Okay, it's its own object, you know. Now that might be a little weird for say like, dirt or wood or, stone or something along those lines, right? That doesn't really make that much sense, right? Um so that's why you typically see, dirt, wood, and stone have, the materials tags associated with it. But still, um, like if you have the slime gel, those are materials, so therefore the boolean there would be true, not false. So, um, because the slime gels are used to make torches, for example. Um, so yeah, okay. Now again, for the tech tree that I'm thinking about doing, um, I mean, it would be good to know what is and isn't materials so that, I can basically determine like, hey, um, is it a material? No? Okay, so the tech tree line ends there. Is it a material? Great. Okay. How many recipes does it, you know, is it used in? Now that one I'm not quite sure what they might, you know, um, I might not know exactly if um, how many recipes it might be used in. If it is indeed a material, you know, does it have a listing of all the recipes associated with it? I'm not sure. Um, so, um, and it doesn't necessarily look as though, um, here, hold on. Let me check out the code here. Um, okay, so we typically use add recipes to basically add, this particular um, this particular mod can be built here. Let me kind of show you the code here, just to make sure everybody knows what I'm talking about. So you have add recipes, right? And this is basically saying, hey, we're adding the fact that we need a certain type of ingredients and a certain amount of ingredients to work with this particular workbench in order to generate a recipe, to make the tutorial sword. All right. Now, um, right now I'm not, the set defaults doesn't have the material on there, so it defaults um, to being false, right? But at the same time, like if I had a like another weapon out there and I added, this particular tutorial sword to its recipe, but the material is still triggered as false, how would the guide kind of react to that? You see what I'm saying? It's a little, I'm not quite sure how they handle that, per se. So, um, does it state, like, is there something in the, um, in the item class documentary, um, to hold on to recipes that it's associated with? Um, yeah, let me see if I can see recipe. Nope, this is the only instance of when it even talks about recipe. So interesting. So this itself doesn't show um, any relations to other items. You know, it's not connected to any other items as to what it can be used, as a material for. You know, so that might be a little bit of a problem that I might need and that I might be facing along these lines um, because if I'm gonna try to make a tech tree, right, and so yeah, just to this is the only recipe that I can find, on this page, right? So, um, so if I was to look at the tModLoader, right? Let me look at the game here. Okay, let me make sure that everything is kind of built and loaded and all that kind of jazz. Make sure that all the mods are um, properly done. And then we go into our testing world, right? Um, so here we are in the world, and if I go to um, if I go to the guide here and I say, hey, crafting, um, I have a material here, and I place it in there. How does it see all the possible, items that, this particular item can make, from this fallen star, for example? How is he able to see all of this? Does it go through the entire list of items that are in the game just to see if this has a recipe for a fallen star? Hmm. I don't know. That seems a bit suspect. I'm not quite sure um, if um, why they would kind of create something along those lines. I'm not sure. So um, so um, so I look at this and I'm like going, okay. This might give me the fact that it might be in the material, but it doesn't necessarily tell me what it's lined up with, which has the potential of, I might have some problems being able to, um, um, seeing what is available. That's why, I kind of want to take a look at what the guide's method of seeing how it looks up the materials and what it's connected with. If I can see that, then I might have an idea as to they're what they're kind of going for, or what I can potentially use, for the tech tree. So, um, because it's basically going to be, um, you know, um, the reason why I want to try to build the tech tree, okay, for those of you that, maybe you're like, this is the first video that you're coming in for the Terraria mod and stuff like that. Um, so one of the problems that I've had was late game, I get to these recipes and I see this one weapon that I might have built before, or I see this one weapon that I got randomly from fighting the monster and stuff like that. And I don't know whether or not I've used it to create some of the more advanced weapons. Now I could basically make the assumption, but let's face it, and say, Calamity, there was a lot of weapons that, I can make. Okay, there's a lot of different recipes that I could, get to. And the problem is that it doesn't necessarily tell you, like, hey, you've actually used this to, to build this one particular weapon. It doesn't tell you that. It doesn't show you that. So that's the idea that I had. I want to try to create something, um, like a civilization tech tree. You put a material in there and it shows you everything that you've crafted with it. Now, some of it might be just kind of, you know, useless, things that you don't really, you might not necessarily want to build, right? Um, I might like throw like an achievement in there or something like that saying like, "Hey, you've built everything in the tech tree. Congratulations," or something like that, right? Um, you know, and I feel sorry for anybody that wants to actually go about doing that because, that is a lot of materials, right? But hey, an achievement is an achievement, right? But here's the thing. Um, the um, I want to be able to see, what weapons I've created and what weapons I've already kind of used. So if I see like an old weapon that I've used to make a newer weapon, but I don't really know that, I can't really remember that, I would want to look into my tech tree and go, oh yeah, okay, I've used this one to create this weapon that I have in my storage or something like that. And done. I don't need to worry about it anymore. I already have it confirmed. And no amount of um uh like, you know, the guide can't help you on that. The the like I'm using like a storage mod right now, and that doesn't necessarily show you what you've built and what you haven't built. So you wouldn't really even know about that one either. So yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, especially if you have like, an older weapon that you find, and then you're already like 2 or 3 generations, ahead on it. So how would you know, right? You wouldn't really know. So that's the purpose of the tech tree, to kind of show the fact that um, you've made progress on building certain weapons, certain items, and so on and so forth that have led to where you currently stand. Okay, so that's the main idea behind it. Um, so um, so that's why the need for understanding how the guide is able to see all the um, all the types of weapons and items that a material can build, and the fact that it can get it like that, snap of the fingers, you place the item in there and it gives all the information right then and there. I need to kind of use that. I need to kind of use that to show the fact that, hey, this one particular item that I'm looking up, in my tech tree has all these other possible, you know, um, you know, items to see, to make, to build, and so on and so forth. Um, so yeah, that's why it's like, okay, um, material, how the guide handles materials is going to be pretty much similar to what I need to do. Um, I just need to kind of make a visual representation of it in a way, sort of. So, um, so while, you know, like a good majority of this, for the mod item, isn't necessary. I'm not going to need to worry about it because I won't be making a mod item for the user interface. I still might need to understand the item in question, especially, you know, its recipe and its, the fact that if it's a material or not, that kind of thing. So, but for the most part, you know, um, like I've just checked to see if there was anything that, um, um, I wanted to kind of see, um, if it can be, where I can find like other, um, you know, if I can see what, the item can be crafted from or, crafted into, then that might be fantastic. But I'm not really seeing that here. So, um, hmm, let's see. Knockback. Max value is 20. Okay. Um, True, the items using animation will not deal damage. Set to true on most weapons that aren't swords. I mean, there's other melee weapons that aren't swords, so, but whatever. You know, like spears, the flail. So, but yeah, whatever. Whether the item is an accessory. Okay, that makes sense. Um, these three correspond to the power, but X power is multiplied by 5. So adjust accordingly. Hmm. Alright, interesting. Um, let's see. Oh, use graphic. Okay. Okay. X mode item. Interesting. Uh, Corresponding to fishing power of bait or poles, respectively, huh? Interesting. Whether item is a quest item. Interesting. This item will show wires when held. Okay. Um, Contract by alpha. There's really not a lot of descriptions for these, but whatever. Draws the item sprite with a color tint. Alright. If true, the accessory won't give any effects unless the world is in expert mode. Interesting. Favorited. Okay. Spawns a specified NPC ID. And don't use. Okay. No other description other than that. Don't use. Gotcha. Um, whether the armor is a vanity item. Gotcha. But yeah, I don't really see anything else here. So or nothing that will really help me in what, you know, my, final result. So let's move on to the next topic here. Vanilla item field values. When learning to create mod items, it's beneficial to learn the effect of various items' properties by seeing how vanilla items achieve their desired effects. Below is a listing of the properties set for each vanilla Terraria item. Be sure to check out item class documentation to learn what each field represents. For example, if you wanted your mod item to use the sound that the flower of fire makes when used, you would find the entity in the pages below and see the flower of fire has a use sound of 20. Now you can say item.useSound is equal to sound ID.item 20 and the set defaults method of your mod item, and it should make the same sound. Okay, well, this is the same one. Is it truly the, for the vanilla items? Well, whatever. Okay, I don't really see much else here that I need outright, so close that one down. And this was, what was this for again? Many examples of different items can be found in this area. Okay. So here's all the different items apparently. Okay. And that doesn't really tell me, a lot, so I'll just close that one down. Don't really need to worry about that. Alright, so that's it for this section. So next is, they're going to talk about the basic projectiles, mod projectiles, and it's like, okay, well, again, this is another one that I don't really need to worry about. I'm not going to need to worry about, generating anything concerning projectiles for a user interface. So while this might be very helpful for anybody that might be wanting to create like a new magical weapon or ranged weapon, gun or whatever, it's not going to be, um, you know, it's not really going to be necessary for me. So, so I think I'll just go ahead and kind of, call this here because to be honest, there's really no need for me to kind of review this, you know, for an extended period. So we're just going to go ahead and back out of that. We don't really need the mod projectile, so let's look at the recipe guide. Basic recipes. Guide has been updated. Okay, so there's that. Recipes can be added to the game in 3 places. Okay, in mod item.add recipes, global item.add recipes, and mod system add recipes. When you add your recipes, where you add your recipes is up to your organizational preferences. But do note that the mod item.create recipe method cannot be used everywhere as is. Use recipe.create where it is not possible. Recipes consist of ingredients, items consumed to craft the result, tiles, tiles you need to stand by, and results, item created. Okay. Basic recipe structure required using statements or required using statements. So, first make sure that you have the following using statements in the CS file. These using statements will let us access recipe-related functions. So using Terraria, using Terraria.id, and using Terraria.modLoader. I hope they kind of explain a little bit more as to like the difference between, you know, they say mod item, global item, and mod system. Okay, well, what's the difference between those 3? I hope they cover that. You know, would I have to kind of, if I'm looking up references to recipes, am I going to have to look at all 3 of those just to see um, if there's a recipe for one particular item in all of them? Don't really know. So, we'll find out. Okay, create recipe and assign recipe result. To start a recipe, we create an instance of the recipe class. We do this through the recipe.create method or the mod item.create recipe method. When creating a recipe, you need to assign the recipe result type in the result stack. The mod item create recipe method assumes that the recipe results in the current mod item and the current mod item, so only the stack size is needed. Okay. The stack size is optional and defaults to 1. So, um, hmm. This is a little bit different than our, say, our code concerning recipes, but at the same time, not completely, right? Because we have our function of add recipes, right? But it still uses the function of create recipe in there. So, um, and as you can see, you see the, using Terraria ID, and using Terraria.modLoader in here. So, um, but, um, you know, uh, the, when you're looking at this, it's like, well, you know, it's not really talking about the function that you're overriding called as recipes, which I'm assuming is associated with the um, mod item, but um, you know they're not really talking about that too much. So we'll just kind of move on from there, I guess, for right now. To start a recipe, we'll create an instance of a recipe class. We will do this through the recipe.create method or the mod item create recipe method. When creating a recipe, we need to assign the recipe result type and result stack. Right, in the default one. In global item class, we type recipe.create to use the recipe.create method. Here are various examples showing vanilla and modded ingredients as well as different stack sizes and custom stack sizes. So we have a recipe that we're creating using the alphabet statue Z. We're using a recipe to create something that uses the statue with 5 of them. We're using a recipe to create using the example item that we created prior. And then we have a recipe that's created using the example item, but we need 10 of them. So in mod system class, we use the recipe.create. Um, recipe is equal to recipe.create, item ID of alphabet statue Z. In mod item class, we can use the recipe create to create a recipe that doesn't have this mod item as a result. So um, recipe create using alphabet statue Z, and we can use create recipe directly to create a recipe that results in this mod item. We can optionally provide a stack size. So I will create the recipe and create the recipe with the size of 10. Add recipe ingredients. Now we can add the ingredients. These are items we want the recipe to be consumed when the recipe is crafted. Add ingredient dirt block, add ingredient ruby. Add ingredient also takes an optional argument for specifying a stack size. So we're adding an ingredient of chain with a stack size of 10. Previous examples added vanilla items to recipe by referencing the item ID class. With a capable IDE such as Visual Studio, you can find autocomplete and InterSense very useful, but you can also look up item ID names and values here. I might need to use this at a later date. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and save this page. Um, there we go. So that I can potentially reference it later, maybe. I'm not sure exactly what um, what I might need overall, in terms of like, oh, hey, um, can I look at one particular list that has them all, or am I gonna have to like, search through their entire like database of items just to find all of them that have material to them, for example, right? I don't know. So that's why it's, this might be, it might be necessary, or it might be just a red herring for me. So who knows? We can also add modded items added by this mod. There are several ways we can do this. Go for whatever approach you like. First approach is the cleanest. All the methods can add the stack parameter. These examples all point to example item class in the example mod content.items namespace. So we add the ingredient of the example item. We add the ingredient of the example item with the 10 stack. We add the ingredient of the item type with the example item. We add the ingredient of the get instance of the example item. And then we add the ingredient of the example item in quotation marks. If you're in a mod item class, you can also use that mod item directly in a recipe. The recipe add ingredient this. Add crafting stations. Next, we can specify the crafting stations. This follows the same patterns as items. You can look up tile IDs here. So, add tile ID workbenches, anvils, empty example workbenches, example workbench, example workbench, example workbench. So, is it the same page as before? No, not really. But this might be kind of handy for us, in the fact that we have a lot of the tile IDs on this page that we might need to reference, you know, um, potentially in the future. So I'm going to go ahead and save that, bookmark that. So, okay, register recipe. Finally, we need to tell tModLoader that our recipe is complete and add it to the game. So we have recipe.register. Okay. What exactly happens there? um, this, sure, this says that, you add it to the game, but how? But whatever. Okay. Using vanilla versus modern ingredients and tiles. As a recap, vanilla items and tiles use the tile ID and item ID classes, while modern items and items used in the mod content.tileType and mod content.itemType methods. So you have the tile ID, and then you have the modded tile, you have the vanilla item, and then you have the modded item. Good to know. Full basic recipe example. Here's a few full basic recipe examples. The first example resides in a mod system class. The recipe takes 1 chain and 10 stone blocks, is crafted at the workbench and anvil, and the resulting item is 1 alphabet statue A. So there's that. Stone block, 1 chain, workbenches, anvils, and then you add the recipe in. So this example is a mod item class. This recipe crafts 3 of the mod item from 5 example items. So we're crafting 3 using example items 5 times, and then we are registering that recipe. So chain syntax. The code in this guide is very wordy. Using the chaining syntax, we can reduce the verbosity of our code. This approach may be more pleasing to the modder, only the final line has a semicolon. So you can basically create the recipe for the alphabet statue A, we're adding the ingredients that we need, stone block of 10 and the chain. We need to add the workbench and the anvil in to make it work, or be able to create the said recipe, and then we register said recipe into the game. So recipe groups. Recipe groups allow a single ingredient to be satisfied from a selection of similar items. The most common example of this is using iron bar or lead bar to craft a recipe. Recipe groups are discussed in intermediate recipes, which we'll eventually get to, later. Again, we're not going to be using this in the sense of we're going to be, crafting any kind of recipes ourselves. We're not creating any kind of items or anything along those lines. So this isn't really that necessary for us to learn a lot from anyway, but at the same time, it might give us an idea as to what we need to kind of look for when we eventually get to the tech tree. So I'm just stating, and this is just kind of, helpful for what we might need to look for in the future. That's all. So don't stress. We'll get there. Just one step at a time here. So conditions. In addition to ingredients and crafting stations, recipes can also have conditions. Each condition must be satisfied for the recipe to be able to be crafted. Water, honey, lava, shimmer. Water, honey, lava, and shimmer are not technically tiles, so to make a recipe requires standing next to those, use one of the following. So add condition, near water, add condition, near lava, add condition, near honey, add condition, near shimmer. Note that the near water is also satisfied by sinks, so don't add the sinks tile separately. Other vanilla conditions. Conditions page lists all the other vanilla conditions, use them in a similar manner. So, so while this might be great in terms of crafting, like you want to kind of craft a new weapon and stuff like that, and you want to say like, hey, um, in order to craft it, you need to be under the condition of being in space or something like that, right? Um, but as you can see, um, you know, there's a lot of potential conditions here that you can look at to use to make the um, to make the weapon, or to make what you want to make in the recipe, right? So, um, but again, for a tech tree, that's really not really necessary. I could see this definitely being needed for when you want to actually create, you know, a new weapon, a new artifact, or something. Definitely want to consider the conditions, right? So like say you want to create a new um, artifact or accessory that can only be crafted after you've gotten into hard mode. You finished out the wall of flesh, and there you go, right? So I can understand that, but you know, um, but again, not something that I personally need to really worry too much about. So um, mods can also use custom conditions. Those are discussed in custom conditions section in the intermediate recipes guide. Okay, so, but again, not necessary for me, but we move on. With multiple recipes in the same add recipes, make sure not to redeclare your variable name. The following can cause errors. So, you know, you create those, um, and that would cause errors because you're, creating, you know, something different, for both of them. So that's not, you know, or you're kind of causing this to be a little bit of a problem here. You can name your variables recipe 1, recipe 2, and so on, but a cleaner approach would be to just reuse the same variable. So you you know you use the recipe, you generate everything that you need to do for said recipe for statute A, and then you reset the recipe, you know, for alphabet statute B, and then you finish off that. So if you're using chain syntax, then simply do the same approach for each recipe on subsequent lines. So basically, um, you know, so here you do, recipe create and all that on one line, and you do the exact same thing, but you change this to a B, and you're pretty much good to go. Although you probably don't really need the recipe there to get it to work. Maybe, potentially, not sure. Um, Matter of fact, I mean, wouldn't you need to have the recipe, recipe is equal to all this for it to work? Hmm. I don't know. Something to. Well, I mean, technically, again, I probably don't need to really worry about it, but still, it's curious. Um, Making an upgraded vanilla tile. As an aside, you may want your mod tile to count as, say, a workbench or anvil. To do this, add the following to your mod tile set static defaults. So adjust tiles, new int tile d workbenches. So complete examples. Here are two complete examples. One showing recipes added in the mod item class more suitable for recipes involving that mod item, and the other showing added recipes in the mod class more suitable for recipes involving vanilla items. Technically, the recipes can go in either location, but for organization purposes, it is sometimes nice to have recipes in mod item classes. So you have the mod item example, and accessories, you have an example shield, and then you have the other methods and fields, and then of course you have your add recipes function there that creates the recipe and registers it. So um, remember that in mod system we must pass in the recipe result item type. So other methods and fields, we have the add recipes. Here's an example of the recipe. Here we reuse recipe, meaning we don't need to redeclare that is a recipe. So there's that. So we're basically creating, you know, we're creating a recipe here to generate the item in this particular case using wood of 999, and then we have another recipe, to create the item in question using 20 blueberries and 2 pumpkin pies, at our workbench to generate the item. So common errors. Error CS0117 item ID does not contain a definition for my mod item. Okay, so these are just pretty much, um, like I said, it's common errors, something that you will see if you, mess up your recipes and stuff like that. So, um, not covered in basic level. All right, good to know. Um, Cross mod content is interesting. That might be interesting to see. Is it covered here at all? I'm not really seeing it. Because um, I might need to look in other mods, or I might need to have it be able to look in other mods to see, whether or not it works for that particular mod, right? I don't really know. That's the problem with this potential tech tree. I want it to be able to be kind of self-stating, like, you you see the mod, you add the mod into your game, and if you have like other mods, it can like, you know, it be able to recognize the fact that you have like other, weapons and materials and stuff like that, and will build the tech tree accordingly. Ideally. Whether or not that's going to happen or whether or not that's true, well, that's another story for another day. And speaking of another day, I think we are done with this one for now. Now, I'm thinking I'll go ahead and save this one for now as well, just because of the, multiple links that I've found on this page and, um, the potential for maybe eventually coming back to this spot, maybe for, just knowing kind of where to look. Like, will I need to look at mod item, global item, or mod system to find, all these recipes or something like that? I don't really know. We'll have to figure that out when we get to that. But, you know, it's good to kind of for me to kind of hold on to it at least for now. So, but that's going to be it for our Terraria modding session. We've just covered the basic recipe guide, so tomorrow we'll look at the mod tile, which, to be fair, um, I don't think I really need to worry too much about any of these. I don't know if I really need any of them. Sound guide I might need to maybe play around with it. Although I don't know if I'll be able to like generate any kind of sound when like opening up the tech tree, or maybe I want to use it for say like um, like achievement. Well, no, I mean if I trigger like an achievement for it or something like that, there should be something that I can just kind of say, hey, this satisfies an achievement, sound alert or something like that. I don't know, but whatever. We'll let this go for right now. But that's going to be it um, for our coding series, our coding session for today. More tomorrow, so look forward to that. We're going to move on to our Warframe content in just a short amount of time. I need to use the restroom real quick um, and get prepped. So, sorry for those of you that aren't even watching the stream. You're watching the video afterwards. You don't really care about those little details, do you? uh, but it doesn't really matter. You're at the end of the video anyway, so a like and subscribe would be fantastic, though, if you can. If you want to check out the description for multiple links that are down there, such as Discord, Patreon, um, Throne. There's my stream team, Team Robot down there. Um, the application page where we're looking for streamers and non-streamers alike to join us. So check that out if you're interested. Um, but that's going to be it for today's coding session for Terraria mods. So thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it. Hopefully I catch you next time. But until then, take care, have a good night, stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll catch you strangers next time. And stop recording.